Hi. I'm there. I'm here.
You've been listening to Dialogue Conspiracy.
You got the end on.
Research specialist Mae Brussell.
Okay. Hi, I'll take it from here. This is Mae, and it's Dialogue Conspiracy. Welcome again to the program. I hate to bring so much gloom to you this beautiful day, the end of the Labor Day vacation, but it's been a hard weekend. I look at the newspaper and I get depressed at all the news coming in, so there's no reason why I should suffer alone. I think I'm going to share it with you today. Last summer, when the men were arrested at the Watergate Hotel, I was rather excited. I thought that the ability to stop a police state or military coup in this country would be possible with some high-level members of the CIA and the White House caught and arrested, and that the system would break down and be exposed for everybody to see. But so much of the corrupt government has been exposed so fast that it's very difficult to take each single issue and assimilate it, so that while people are trying to absorb the day-to-day shock of the White House plumbers or the enemy list or the logs that the president has where he wiretapped conversation, or the perjury, or the corrupt practices and extortion and bribery and forging, while everyone is taking in these various crimes, and now with the vice president being almost on the verge of being indicted for extortion and bribery and other charges, when he was just the governor, they're eliminating the charges while he was the vice president. With all that coming in, it's hard to read the small print behind the conspiratorial news, but the print rolls along, and every day it seems to be, at least for me, more depressing than ever, because the things that were planned for the United States government after 1972 are going into power, but they're being concealed while the Watergate news takes the headlines. You heard on the news this evening that the vote for the death penalty bill will come before the Assembly in Sacramento this week. The Supreme Court in California outlawed the death penalty. A Mr. Mitchell, a black man, the last person killed on death row, claimed that he was innocent. He screamed that he was innocent, and he was killed anyway. The Supreme Court was overruled. There was a lot of illegal manipulation by the Attorney General, Evel Younger, to get the death penalty on the ballot, and it won. In the last election, the people of California said, yes, we need the death penalty. The people that support the death penalty now have signed up with J. Walter Thompson, the advertising agency, to push through advertising on the beauty of being a policeman and law enforcement as against those criminals out there. J. Walter Thompson represents the law enforcement now in California. The death penalty bill was voted by the people in California, but they didn't say, they said that there would be death penalty, for that it would be possible to take a life in exchange for a life. That's what was on the ballot. But in the meantime, a member of the Senate, Senator George Amigian, built himself a beautiful death penalty bill, which is mandatory death penalty for certain crimes, which he wanted, and no judicial review. Well, the way the judges are appointed by men like the Governor Ronald Reagan, or political appointments where they're known racists, or they approved of the genocidal war in Asia, and they have no consideration for the black prisoner, the Chicano, the underdog, political prisoner, the chance of going through the courts and getting off is so slim. And if they get it guilty, it's no judicial review. Now, there are mandatory death on many charges, 14 charges on this bill. And Robert Crown in the Assembly in California Senator Crown did not approve of this bill, and he was killed jogging. He had the deciding vote in the House Judiciary before it goes to the Assembly. He was killed this last spring while he was jogging, and I believe that was a murder. And so the deciding vote was left dangling, and a man was appointed, Mr. Dixon, to become member of the Judiciary, and he was forced to water the bill down to a degree that it would go before the Assembly for a vote this coming Thursday or Friday. I was so depressed. I never, very seldom go to bed when I'm depressed. I get angry or think of something to do, but I tried to sleep this one off last week because I have been writing to a lot of prisoners in Soledad, San Quentin, Folsom, who are innocent of charges. I'm trying to get lawyers for them. I'm trying to collect the evidence. There's men who'd be on death row who didn't commit the crimes they did, and it breaks my heart to see how these men are railroaded. And even Charlie Manson, who didn't kill any of the people in the houses of the Bianca family or the Sharon Tate family, engineered by Army intelligence. His bus came from Sacramento money. He was funded at Spawn Ranch and Barker Ranch. He was a protege of L.A. Peter Pitchess, the sheriff, and the sheriff's department. They let him have everything he wanted until he did the killing. After some people picked him up, he was released from Spawn Ranch from the police authorities and sent to Barker Ranch, and by a fluke, he was arrested. Charlie Manson didn't kill these people, and a Texas boy named Charles Watson did all of it, and because his name isn't associated with those crimes, he'll be out someday, and Charlie will not be. Sirhan did not kill Robert Kennedy. A man named Thane Caesar killed Robert Kennedy. He was a security guard, the same ilk as John Caulfield, who was a security guard working for the White House and the Treasury Department that you see with Mr. Laswitz and Mr. Kalmbach and their secret funding. The White House plumbers, the same man, Thane Caesar was a plumber. He was a maintenance man at Lockheed. He was a plumber, incidentally, isn't a man who finds leaks because of National Security Council. It's a name used by the Central Intelligence Agency for just that purpose, to fill in certain spaces that they need, and it's an activist role. It is not a patchwork job. Plumber is an espionage term. Thane Caesar is out free, living somewhere in Van Nuys, California. The gun that pulled Robert Kennedy was 1 inch from the back of the head. He's out free. Well, I got up Saturday night. I went to bed, and I couldn't sleep, and I got up, and Saturday morning, I wrote 60 letters from morning till night. I just made up my mind that I would write to every member of the Assembly, to every Democratic member, and some of the Republicans, because Mr. Demesian is counting on, he said, some Democrats to vote along with him on this bill. So I personally wrote a letter to every single one of these men, and I found no other way to spend my weekend but to do that and say, are you the Democrat that's going to be dumb enough to keep continuing this fascist state in this country? And I listed a few of the innocents that I knew that were on death row or would be dead. And the outrage of Joseph Jenkins is another prisoner. I went to see him a few weeks ago up at San Quentin. Louis Tackwood gave the testimony in L.A. for Jenkins, and he didn't kill anybody. And the man who killed and raped a particular woman has signed, in Marin County, has signed a paper. He's at Folsom Prison saying he did it. And it would be a matter of getting an attorney, which I'm trying to do, to get Joseph to be able to live again and out on the streets again. So if you listen to this program, and if you care at all, please write and send it airmail, because tomorrow's Tuesday. They're going to vote on Thursday when they get up. So pick up a telephone for $1.25 and wire the assemblyman. You must know who the ones you care about: Alan Cerroti, Mr. Bielenson. There's a whole list of good ones up there. Tell them please to vote against anything so final as automatic death on these various charges. Last week we talked a little bit about, quite a bit, about the assassination plot. They called it a plot finally down in New Orleans that was going to get Richard Nixon. And it was very interesting. Up until this point in American history for the last 10 years, every assassination or murder was a lone assassin, a deranged mind, a misfit, no conspiracy, no plot. But the script has changed now, and Richard Nixon was supposed to be in danger. If you saw Time magazine this week, I brought it in because they referred to the New Orleans plot in the article, the alleged plot. They used the word a plot, and the connections, and they used the word plot a third time, and I circled it, and the conspiracy. And there's a big effort to draw a plot and a conspiracy all of a sudden, and I suggest that this could be to justify the $10 million in security that Richard Nixon says he needs for his 10 offices. But we heard a lot about Mr. Godet, who was going to be the fall guy, the patsy, who was out in New Mexico, who wasn't even in New Orleans when all this was supposed to happen. But it's interesting, in the week since we met and shared our thoughts together, a woman who had tipped off that Godet was going to kill Nixon turned out to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, a female member of the Klan. There was a tip-off at the time Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested. Somebody from Alabama called the FBI, go to Klein's in Chicago. That's where the gun came from, and there were tip-offs of people. Well, the woman from the Klan gave the tip-off of Godet, and it turns out that she didn't recognize the face. She didn't know the man, and he was in New Mexico. But this way they could blame a radical, long-haired hippie who once had marijuana, who's living on a commune. And that's how you create the profile of an assassin. The man said he had a gun because he thought he was going to be killed, and they were chasing him. Well, that's not very far-fetched when you think that Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby were killed, both in the Dallas jail. So why wouldn't you kill a hippie on a commune? And if he were dead, you'd say he's part of the conspiracy. But it was interesting that Time magazine had something which none of my newspapers had all week, and I take 8 papers a day. It said that in regards to the plot, they referred to the Panther plot, which turned out it didn't exist at all. They referred to Godet, but this Time had something else. It said the first incident that made them think it was a plot concerned several white men, all said to be armed, who were reportedly moving into the Parkchester Apartments, a low-rent black housing complex in northern New Orleans. Armed with rifles and shotguns, the police raided the apartment to find the suspects had fled the police, and later they theorized that the men had been common burglars and hold-up men and not would-be assassins. Now that is very interesting. We talked about the police uniform being taken at 10:30 in the evening, and the badge and nameplate taken from a police car, and the chief of police cars was stolen temporarily. This group of white men that were armed, that were reportedly in a black apartment, reminds me at the time of the Charlie Manson case, when the 5 people were murdered one evening, Sharon Tate and the other in her home, and the next night the Biancas. And when the girls from the Manson clan were arrested, they said that they left credit cards of the Biancas in the black part of town at the gas station in a washroom to make it look like the blacks had done the murders, that they wanted the blacks to look like the murders. Then on the door of the home where Sharon Tate was killed with their blood was written, "Death to the pigs," in blood, and that would make it look like a slogan that the Panthers used. And the very first article that was written about the Sharon Tate murders was written by Ed Butler, who works for Patrick Frawley, and Ed Butler worked with Lee Harvey Oswald in New Orleans when they were both intelligence agents. And Butler had an article, "Did Hate Kill Tate?" blaming the Panthers for the death. So there were 3 leads to blame black people. So here you have white people moving in the black part of town. Well, you notice none of their names appear. They were never photographed, and they never got to play that the other 2 group. And I think that that's very important, because I think that Richard Nixon, the assassination plot, could have been real there. And the Secret Service might have done a fluke, and somebody released the information about the conspiracy that they weren't supposed to do, because there are some good guys. There was a man in Miami in the Secret Service who sent tapes of the planned assassination of President Kennedy 3 weeks before he was killed in Dallas, and there are tapes that exist of the assassination plot. So Kennedy took the helicopter from the airport to where he was speaking, and the assassination took place in Dallas, but a Secret Service man blew that, and Lee Harvey Oswald had called the FBI. There's 2 memos of messages, one from New Orleans and one from Dallas, telling about the assassination plan for Kennedy. But he didn't know he'd be the fall guy. He was paid by the FBI, but he didn't know he'd be the fall guy for this operation. Now, the same week, August 23rd, this last week, a Secret Service agent was killed in Washington, D.C. And this didn't make the headlines either. 2 people were killed. I say murdered because I look at them as murders. That's the only way I see half of these things now. A British newspaper publisher was run over in front of San Clemente just the same day that Richard Nixon had his press conference there. But in Washington, D.C., there was a small article in the second section, page 18, that said, "Secret Service agent killed. A U.S. Secret Service special agent was found shot to death in his apartment on the Prince George County Police report." They said the death was apparently a suicide, although there was no note. Nothing was found next to him, and they declined